Coming up on First at 4, at least 6 people are dead following a shooting at a private school in Nashville. And a massive strike along with protests in Israel have stopped for now, following a pause on a controversial plan to reform the nation's judiciary system.
And showers for now, but cooler air working into the region. Tracking the latest on frost potential coming up as Mountain News First at 4 starts right now.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News First at 4.
Good afternoon, I'm Steve Hensley. First at 4, 3 students and 3 adults have been killed in a mass shooting at a private Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee. Police say they engaged the suspect, a heavily armed woman in her 20s, who is also dead. CBS's Christian Benavidez has the latest.
Police rushed to the grounds of the Covenant School in Nashville Monday, responding to calls of an active shooter encountering a heavily armed suspect on the 2nd floor.
We have identified the suspect right now, tentatively a 28-year-old female.
Nashville police say the suspect gained access to the school through a side entrance carrying 2 assault-style rifles and a handgun.
We have 3 adult victims, and we have 3 children who have been identified and their families have been contacted. I was literally moved to tears to see this and the kids as they were being ushered out of the building.
The Covenant School, a private Presbyterian school, has about 200 students from preschool through the 6th grade. The violence comes less than a year after the massacre at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas.
It's hard to stop a determined person who's done their homework.
Kathy Guider is a former FBI special agent.
She came well armed, it appears, so the intention was definitely there. And I think, the next question is, how did she get the weapons? Where did she get the weapons? Where did she get the ammunition?
Faculty and parents had previously participated in active shooter training at the school. President Biden addressed the shooting Monday afternoon.
So I call on Congress again to pass my assault weapons ban. It's about time that we began to make some more progress.
Nashville police say the tragedy unfolded over roughly 14 minutes, and they're examining video from the campus. Christian Benavidez, CBS News.
Authorities in Nashville say the shooting suspect was a student at the school in the past.
An absolutely beautiful weather day all throughout the mountains today. We continue to see plenty of sunshine, comfortable temperatures. There's the view from our studios here in Hazard, 66 the current reading. Yeah, it's pretty nice out there. There's the view from Pikeville, from our Pikeville Medical Center camera, 67 there. We continue to see pretty nice conditions all through the region. Temperatures middle and upper 60s, even a few low 70s sneaking in at the moment. And that is going to continue as we head through this evening. So forecast first through the evening. Temperatures remain mild at least through the rest of the daylight hours. In the 60s, we fall into the 50s tonight and eventually down into the 40s. I'll have the details, though, on when we could see a return to the potential for frost through the region in a few minutes. Steve?
Evan, thank you. In the months following last year's devastating flood, several Eastern Kentucky organizations stepped up to help those impacted by the flood, but due to lack of funding, one local nonprofit cannot do it anymore. The Breathitt County-based organization Aspire Appalachia has dedicated much of its time to helping flood survivors secure materials needed to rebuild their homes, but now the organization is ending this program for the time being.
We did not anticipate the March 2021 flood, nor did we anticipate the December 2021 tornadoes in western Kentucky, and of course we didn't anticipate the July 2022 flooding until we were living amid it. We're not sure what the future holds in that regard, but as an organization, I believe we have done all we can to show that we are willing to step up during those times.
Although those with Aspire Appalachia say they are unsure as to whether they will offer flood relief services again in the future, they are glad to have connections with other organizations that can help flood-impacted families when they need assistance. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and today Governor Andy Beshear and advocates took part in a kickoff event. That event involved the placing of pinwheels in front of the state capitol to symbolize the number of children younger than 4 in Kentucky. The governor says it was one of the largest crowds he'd ever seen for a kickoff event like this. Part of this year's initiative encourages people to take the Lean on Me pledge.
To be able to allow all our community partners to lean on us when they need help. That's what we're here for. We're here to support all of Kentucky. We're here to support all of Kentucky's children.
Today's event also included the governor signing several bills that deal with youth and children, including one that clarifies incest and another that states child sex offenders cannot come within 1,000 feet of schools, daycares, or other children's facilities. We'll have more from Frankfort later tonight. The majority of Kentucky counties saw a decline in voter registration in the last few years. A recent purge of voter rolls revealed 82 of the 120 counties in the state experienced a decline since January 2020. The voters were removed because they were inactive. More than 130,000 voters have been removed now from the rolls. Close to 4,000 voters were added in February. Both Republican and Democratic parties declined by about 3%. Israel's main labor union says it will call off a nationwide strike after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delayed a vote to overhaul the nation's highest courts. Demonstrations in Israel about the plan erupted overnight after Prime Minister Netanyahu fired the defense minister who spoke out against the plan. CBS's Skylar Henry has more.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will hold off on a judicial overhaul plan, which has set off strong protests. He said, out of national responsibility, from a desire to prevent the nation from being torn apart, I'm calling to suspend the legislation. Thousands of demonstrators have been protesting the plan, which would give Netanyahu more power over the Supreme Court. The right-wing government coalition says it's necessary to limit the influence of unelected judges, but critics say it destroys the system of checks and balances.
The first people that will be hurt when our democracy becomes a dictatorship in Israel will be the women.
The move to delay the judicial reform may not be enough to quell the demonstrations.
We said from the start, stopping temporarily the legislation is not acceptable and not enough. What we demand is to throw all this legislation to the dumpster of history.
The Biden administration has avoided taking a strong stance one way or the other, but did praise Netanyahu for making the decision to delay the legislation, saying compromise is the best way forward.
Democratic societies are strengthened by checks and balances, and fundamental changes to a democratic system should be pursued with the broadest possible base of popular support.
The strikes and protests have prompted Israel to close embassies around the world, even the U.S. Embassy in Washington, D.C. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
Now, Netanyahu is currently standing trial on corruption charges. If the legislation is passed, he will have more control over the same judiciary which is overseeing his trial. Netanyahu insists he has no personal motives in pushing for the legislation to pass. Vice President Kamala Harris continues her tour overseas, meeting with the president of Ghana. Harris met with leaders and staff before sitting down with the president for a bilateral meeting. The White House says the aim of the meetings is to affirm the strength of the U.S.-Ghana bilateral relationship and the long-standing ties between the American and Ghanaian people.
African nations such as Ghana play a critical role in a number of global issues, whether it be the issue of food security, the climate crisis, or resilient supply chains.
Harris's visit comes as China and Russia try to grow their influence in the region. Sir Elton John and Prince Harry made a surprise appearance to London's High Court today. They were there for the start of a preliminary hearing in a lawsuit against the owner of the Daily Mail. A group of high-profile figures is suing Associated Newspapers Limited for reported illegal information gathering. The plaintiffs also include Elizabeth Hurley, Sadie Frost, David Furnish, and Doreen Lawrence. The group accuses the publisher of hiring private investigators to plant listening devices in homes and cars to record private calls. The publisher has rejected those claims as preposterous smears. The hearing is expected to last 4 days.
Well, coming up, as First at 4 continues, cooler air is being dragged in on the backside of a low pressure. The very latest on what this means for frost potential just ahead.